Hi, this is Cheryl. Today we're going to upcycle a wooden tray that I thrifted from Goodwill. It's just a plain wooden tray. It was in really good shape, and so far I have stained the back of it so that it's nice and dry, and I am using a stain from Mini Wax. I got this at I think Hobby Lobby. Not Hobby Lobby, but Lowe's. But I think you can get it at Walmart too. And it's the espresso color. It's a nice dark rich color. And I'm just taking a sponge brush. By the way, wear gloves. It will stain your hands and your clothes and anything else it touches. But don't let that stop you. Brush it on with your sponge. You could also use a rag. Just get it on the wood. And then you're going to wipe off the excess. And I like some of the grain showing through and maybe some irregularities, knots, whatever. I like those showing through the wood. I think it gives it character. But you could put on another coat and make it darker if you chose to. It's entirely up to you. It's your piece. You design it the way you want it. And this, once you've got it on and wiped off, it dries pretty fast. You could touch it pretty quickly with your bare hands, but it wouldn't hurt to go over it with a heat gun or a hair dryer. Maybe even put it in front of a fan while you're getting all your other things prepped. And you can see I'm getting some on the bottom of the tray, but I'm not too worried because I am going to be painting that a lighter color so that my rice paper pops when I've got it pasted down. And you've probably got some old t-shirts you can cut up at the house, or just old rags you can use to do this, but you could also buy a bag of them at Walmart, just work rags. Now this is the decoupage paper, the rice paper that I'm going to be using. I got this from Micah Daughters, that's M-A-I-K-I Daughters on Etsy. And it's called Fly a Kite. It's so pretty. I think it's like 14 by 20, maybe. It doesn't fit exactly like I want it. It might be the 20, it might be the size up from that, but there are like two sizes. If you look it up on Micah Daughters, they may have it in stock. If they don't, just look it up in Etsy under Fly a Kite decoupage paper. You'll find it, and it comes, I think it comes in two different sizes. This might be a little bit bigger than the 14 by 20, there's one size larger. But I'm going to remove some of those edges because it doesn't fit right in my tray. It's a little larger than my tray, so it is probably bigger than what I said before. But I just lay it in there, then I take a paintbrush, dip it in some water, and wet down those edges. Now, a lot of people use water pens. I don't have one. Maybe I'll get one, maybe I won't, but a paintbrush with water works just as good. And I'm just taking off the edges of this paper. I don't want them to be straight lines. I want it to be wispy, or have a wispy edge, because I'm going to be painting around that paper so that it will match seamlessly between the frame and the paper itself. I want to extend that look all the way to the edge of the bottom. It's much easier to blend paint into your paper when you don't have a straight edge. Just cut off whatever you don't need there and go with it. If you accidentally pull off a little more than you wanted, it's no big deal. We can fix that with some paint. So now I've got it completely cut the way I want it. And we can see that as it sits in the bottom of my tray, it now is a little smaller than the bottom. So that's where we're going to be painting. This really is a pretty piece. I think it's done by Whimsical. It's just painted so perfectly to me. It's just beautiful. And who doesn't love seeing children on the beach? Now what I'm doing here, I'm just going to put a coat of, what is that? It's not paint, it's not glue, but it's just a primer coat. There it is. I'm putting down a primer coat just because that wood is really old and dry. I don't think it's vintage old, but it's been around a while and it's dried out. It hadn't been, taken care of well. So I'm going to put a primer coat down so none of that yellow will come through on my paper. And also it gives me a nice surface to actually put my decoupage medium down. First my paint and then my decoupage medium. It gives me a nice surface. And if you notice, a lot of your papers, especially if they're a larger size, they're going to have creases in them. So I just took this little bitty yarn that I have, set it very low setting, and then I'm just going to gently iron out those creases. I'm not too concerned that if there's a little bit of crease there, but I want to get that big crease laid down a little bit so that it's easier to decoupage over, and then you won't see that crease in the middle of your art. And again, make sure that your iron is set really low. Don't press down super hard, just gently go over those creases. And I like to turn it over and work it from the back side as well. I've just got a piece of cardboard there. It's my ironing board. I think here I noticed a little hole right in the middle. I think it's in the center where all the folds met. But that's not a big deal. I just kind of move the paper in to close it up, and we can always fix that with a little bit of paint too. Okay, now my board is dry. You can see that primer on there. And I'm just kind of making sure there's no dust in there. And I'm just going to be using a plain acrylic white paint to cover that bottom. This doesn't have to be perfect. This needs to be covering most of the board. If you have some that's, it's not like you have to have 2 coats on this so you have a perfect coat of paint, but you do want that light color to enhance your rice paper when you get it down. See, I'm trying not to go above the line there. I want it to stay on the bottom. If you're afraid that you might not be able to make a straight line with your paintbrush, go ahead and put some painter's tape down around those edges so that it doesn't go up your board. And you'll see that eventually when I start adding color to it, I do add some tape. I don't know if you can hear my dogs in the background, but a bird may have flown into our airspace. They don't like that. Okay, once you've got that painted and dried, then you're going to attach it to the board. And I use Pentart glue and varnish. This is the matte. I like the matte a lot. You can leave your art matte, or you can actually add a glossy varnish to it. So I like to start out with the matte. You're going to position your paper exactly the way you want. You want to make sure it's not crooked. It's not like you don't have any wiggle room to get in there and move it around, but the less you move it around, the less likely you are to tear it. So pretty much try to get it where you want it. And I know I always kind of struggle with making sure it's centered. I'm a work in progress. And when you're decoupaging, especially on a larger piece, you want to do a section at a time. And I have this little squeegee that I bought from the Decoupage Queen. It's really neat. It's squeegee foam on one side and kind of a rubbery plastic on the other. And I'm very gently pushing that paper from the inside out. I'm fixing any bubbles or creases I might find as I go. And this is a lot easier when you're working with just a little section instead of the whole picture. And on this board, I can take some of that paper and push it like right up underneath the frame there. Almost like has a little tiny space where I can push the paper back up underneath there. Gently rub your fingers along it and make sure you have no bubbles or wrinkles that you want to get rid of. The way this print was painted, it almost looked like there was wrinkling in the paint. I don't know what technique they used. I'm not an artist per se, but if you had some wrinkles in your paper, you probably wouldn't notice them because of the way it's painted. A true artist could tell you what that technique is. I cannot. And I'm going up underneath the paper where I stopped. I even pull it back just a little bit so that I can make sure there's not a dry space between where I stopped and where I'm starting the next section. You can see there's some inconsistencies in my painting there, but it's not going to show up underneath that paper. Like I said, this was just a one coat wonder. I wasn't too concerned about having full coverage. You do want to make sure that each section is totally covered in your decoupage product, though, in your glue. I love this little tool. If you don't have one, you don't have to. I know a lot of people take up wadded up plastic wrap paper and they use that to push the paper around. That works really nicely. Or have you seen those little plastic putty things that they use to fix holes in the walls? It's a little bitty plastic putty knife that you can put spackle in and fix a nail hole. Those work really good too. But I just really love this one from Decoupage Queen. This little squeegee. They even make rollers. I think they're called brayers. I'm not sure. I don't have one. Maybe it will someday, but not now. Just consider the dog's background music. I have 8 grandsons too, so there's a good chance one of them might pop through the door and say something. Now all that space, that white space you see around the rice paper, we're going to be painting. You don't necessarily have to have the exact colors that are shown on that piece, on that paper, because you can take what you have and mix them. And you can probably come up with something really close. And if you can't come up with something really exact, you can always move that paint color that you've mixed up onto the paper itself so that it looks like it was made that way. But we'll get to that later. I love taking old things and redeeming them. Taking what someone threw away or considered trash and turning it into something beautiful and useful. Whether you actually use it as a tray or you just enjoy the artwork displayed in your home somewhere. That's what the Lord does. He takes things that people have thrown away or abused and He makes them new. I like that. This looks like a beautiful, warm, sunny day at the beach. And while I'm sitting here doing this voiceover, it's 15 degrees outside. And I live in North Central Texas, so it doesn't get 15 degrees all the time. We've got a layer of snow and ice out there. I think the last time we had something like this was in 2011. I think they called it Snowmageddon. We never lost power this time though, so I'm grateful. But I know there's a lot of people out there who have. I pray that they get their power up and going soon. And I'm just rubbing my fingers gently across it to make sure there's no air bubbles or major wrinkles that I want to kind of rub out. When you do this, be gentle because you can tear your paper. I was just tidying up that right corner piece. Now I'm going to dry that first coat of glue down. Keep your heat tool moving around constantly because you can burn your paper. You can make it bubble up. You don't want it to do either. And you can see I'm holding it still there. I should be moving it around. Once you've got that first layer dry, then you're going to put a top coat of decoupage glue and varnish on top of that piece. We're just going to put a nice even layer. You want to make sure you're putting enough product on your brush that it's not catching as you go across your work. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. If you're catching that glue with your paintbrush and it's not going across your artwork gently and smoothly, you're taking product off, you're not adding it. If you've got that second coat on, dry that really good too. It won't take long. Again, keep your heat gun or your hair dryer or whatever you're using moving. If you don't have a hair dryer or a heat gun, you can just let it air dry for an hour or so. Come back to it. I personally am not that patient. It takes me a lot of effort to actually let resin dry for 24 hours. So there you go. That's just me. Okay, now we get to start painting around that rice paper so that we don't have any white space around it. I want the image to go and spread out to the end of my tray there. And you can see I've used here grays, different blues, because this picture has a lot of color in it, actually. And there's actually more green and gray in there than you think. But I have taken every blue color I think that I see, and I've poured it out onto my paper there. Some of them I can probably use maybe just the way they are, but most of the time I'm having to blend the colors, or I'll put down a base color and then put a top color on that, and then kind of blend it in with that sponge. You could use a paintbrush, but I like the sponge because for me it's easier to blend. You can see at this point I don't have any painter's tape down because I'm thinking, oh, I can get around that edge pretty easily, but I really couldn't. So you can see me going up above on the edge of that wood, which I can fix with paint, but I get to the point where I think, okay, I'm going to have to fix more than I want to, so I will end up eventually putting some painter's tape around there so that I'm not going up the size of my board. Like I said, you may have a color that matches perfectly, but more times than not you don't, and you're going to have to end up mixing colors. If you put some paint down on there and you think, oh my God, it's the wrong color, don't panic. Let it dry a little bit, use your heat gun to dry it, and then add a different color on top of it and blend it together. You might be surprised it will come out just the way you need it to. And remember, your paint will dry a little darker than it goes on. So once you've got it dried out, you might see that you need to adjust something. Or if you want to see it right away, take your heat gun and dry that paint so you can see what color it's going to be when it's dry. I love the sky in this picture. It's a mix of blue, sunny sky, a few clouds. I think things are so much more interesting when it's not just one solid color. I mean, somebody could have just put a blue sky back there and not had any variation in color, but it wouldn't have been near as pretty as when they've taken it and added different colors into the sky. It gives it depth and movement. All of these paints are from Walmart. It's Waverly chalk paint. Make sure you stir them up really well, especially when you first open them, because there's a layer of, I don't know if it's water or what, at the top of them. With any paint, you need to really shake it up or stir it well before you use it. That way you're getting the true color of what's advertised on the outside of that bottle. I'm always amazed about how much green there is in paintings. I don't know if it's just the images that I'm choosing lately, but there's always green in the picture. Even on the beach, there's some green tint to those clouds up there. And I always like to, before I put my lids back on all my paints, just take a wet wipe and wipe around those rims. Because if you don't, they're going to be a booger to open next time. I've had to take my heat gun to many a top to loosen up the paint. So do yourself a favor, kind of clean up the top edges of your paint before you put that lid back on. I'm actually using different shades of green here because I don't know if I'm going to be able to use one as it is or if I'm going to have to mix it. Sometimes you have to mix things with a little gray or a little white. For me, this is the best part of the whole project, is the painting part. I've always loved to paint, and it's so much fun trying to figure out how to blend colors. If you wanted to practice on something that you weren't afraid of making mistakes on, you can get an old piece of wood, paint it white, get a napkin with lots of color in it, tissue, paper, whatever. Make sure you take the plies off the napkin and decoupage it onto the wood and leave space around it so that you can paint and blend colors to match what's on your tissue, what's on your image. And it's a really nice way to practice blending colors without fear of messing something that you're really wanting to look good. Like, say for instance, I'm going to be selling this. This will be in my Etsy shop, and I wouldn't want to make some hideous mistake on it and then not be able to sell it. So if you're really uncomfortable with blending colors at first, just practice on something cheap. My husband has pieces of wood in his garage that he's cut up, and I use those to either make things with or practice on. If you're doing some crackle finishes on things, you can take an old board and put your finishes on it and then use different mediums to actually fill in the cracks. You could use mica powders and see how they look. You could use antique pastes. Antique pastes, I mean, they come in all different colors too. There's golds, there's umbers. So do mica powders. I mean, gosh, colors are almost endless. But you can take old pieces of wood and practice on your techniques, and you can find out what you like, how it works, and have fun with it. You'll surprise yourself, I promise. You see how I'm blending the colors there? I've taken some gray and I'm going over some of that brighter blue. There's even some dusty pink in those clouds. I know you've looked outside, like during a sunset or even a sunrise, and you've noticed that all the different colors in the clouds. There's pinks, there's purples, there's blue, gray from the rain clouds. And you have light shining through over here and a little darker over here. I'm painting this upside down so you guys can see the image properly. But if you aren't filming, pick up your board, turn it around, look at it from different angles to make sure that your colors look right in the light. Light changes color too. I mean, if you put something in a dark room, it's going to look different than it would by a bright, shiny, sunlit window. So just, make sure you're turning your piece around so that you can actually see it in different lights. Now I'm going to try to match some of that pink color in there. Dusty rose, pink. My little Shih Tzu is trying to stir up trouble out there. I can hear her. The two labs are probably asleep on the floor. You can see that I'm well down into the paper at this point. I'm not just painting around the edges, I'm actually painting on the paper. I don't know how you guys paint. I mean, I don't paint the edge all the way around at once. I'll paint something like I started over there in that corner, but then I saw something on the other side, and I thought, oh, I know what color needs to be there, so I went over to that and started painting there. Then I saw a color up at the top that I knew how to do, so I went over to that. I paint what I see when I see it, and eventually it gets around the whole board. I think this is where I decided to put the painter's tape around it. I mean, it's not horrible. I could go in with some brown paint and just paint those around the edge, but I thought, no, it's making more work for myself. If you take a lighter color, it could be white, it could be gray, it could be a lighter blue, and just add some light back into those dark clouds. That's what I'm trying to do there. So see, I've now got my painter's tape around it. And to get right up in those creases, I've taken a very small paintbrush, and I'm not actually using brush strokes. I'm kind of dabbing the paint into it. I'm using dabbing. As I was dabbing, and notice I was taking paint off instead of putting it on, so I'm drying it out a little bit to see if I need to put another color in there or the same color. I'm using quick little brush strokes here because that's what shows up in this picture. If you notice the water, you can see not straight lines, but you can see where there are different colors going from across one side to the other. They're not a straight line, and it's not a defined line, but you can definitely tell there's a distinction between colors. Like one dark color will go all the way across and end up really blue at the end and fade out at the other side. So that's what I'm doing with that little brush, and just kind of short feathery brushes across there to kind of mimic that look. I hope this encourages somebody out there to try this. It's almost like therapy to me. It's peaceful, it's calm, even with my dogs barking their heads off. When I'm painting or creating something in my creative corner, everything else seems to disappear. I'm not thinking about what bills I have to pay. I'm not thinking about what I'm cooking for dinner, which I probably should be. I'm not thinking about how many piles of laundry I need to do. I'm just thinking about the color, the painting, the picture, the project. That paper is from that little spiral notebook there. It's called mixed media paper. People can use it actually to make art with. I use it to mix paints because it's nice and thick and it doesn't seep through the paper onto my table or anything. That doesn't mean I'm not going to accidentally turn the paper upside down and lay it on my table and make a huge mess. I actually have done that, but normally, if you're just setting your paper down, that paint's not going to seep through that paper and make a mess on your table. Give yourself a minute to look everything over, what you've done so far. It's not finished, we still have to do the beach. But let it dry too. As you're working on the bottom half where the beach is, your sky and water is drying. And you'll be able to tell once it's dry if it needs anything else. If it needs to add color, or lighten it up, darken it up, add some shadows or light. And as you're looking at the sand on the beach here, I mean, that's not even one solid color. There are numerous colors within that sandy beach color. As in life, I mean, the way the sunlight hits a certain part of it, the way the cloud covers another part of it. Is there a rock, a dark rock? Is there a piece of rusty something on the beach? Seashells are all different colors. They're going to make your sand look a different color. So when you're thinking about matching a painting, make sure you're looking at what you're trying to match, because it's not all one color. It might be the same color or different tones or variations of it, but it's not going to be all, let's say it's not going to be all hazelnut, or it's not going to be all brown. It's going to have variations of color in it. And that's where you get to play. You can see here I'm not using my sponge right now. I've got a small paintbrush and I'm kind of dabbing in the color, and then I can do soft strokes with the brush if I need to, but it's not a straightforward, let's bring the brush across the canvas type thing. It's very intentional. And these little sea sponge things are really neat to dab your paint in. It kind of makes it blend together really nicely, like it's like an intentional, I can't say the word, intentional but not intentional look. It looks natural. I don't know what this is. It might be a rock with a shadow, but I believe I'm using a dark umber here. And I'm actually painting on the rice paper. Giving it a little bit more definition. And also blending it into what I'm actually painting around the edges. Those children in this painting look like they don't have a care in the world. It makes me happy and smile just to look at them. See all those different colors I have over there? The yellows and the oranges, umber, the browns and greens. And I'm just taking a dabber sponge brush and kind of just blending in the colors together. This is really in this rice paper image. There's not a whole lot of okay, this is a definite color here, or this color is really defined here. They're all kind of blending together in and out of each other. I think it's really interesting the way it looks. I'm surprised I don't have paint all underneath that board that I'm going to have to fix. I was also surprised that I don't have paint all over my arms and elbows. And I'll just sit and let you watch me paint for a little while. Yep, I put the paintbrush in my mouth. I think this would be so pretty displayed in a beach house, a lake house, vacation home. Or do you have a nautical beach theme in your home? It'd be pretty displayed anywhere in that type of home. Or you just want a memory of a day at the beach. almost done. Just a few little spaces left. I kind of like using the paintbrush here because it leaves a texture. It almost looks like grains of sand, since that's what we're actually painting, is grains of sand. I don't know if you can tell, but the painting, whoever painted this, they're almost using like little blocks of color. They're, I don't know how else to explain it. They look like little blocks of color. They're not super defined. I'm trying to recreate that here. Every time I stick my head in the picture frame, it reminds me that time is coloring my hair as well. Right here, I wanted to kind of soften this up some more, so I'm getting a little bit of water on my sponge and kind of moving the paint around. Not dramatically, but just a little. So I'm going to dry it off a little bit so I can see how it looks when it's dry. taking a minute to see if I've missed any spots or if I want to change anything. Feel free to walk away from it, let it dry, come back and look at it. If you're ever stuck at a certain point and you're not sure how to move forward, walk away. Walk away, go do something for an hour or two, come back and look at it, and you'll see it differently. And then suddenly you'll know how to move forward. I think one of the hardest parts for me is knowing when something's done. At some point you have to say, okay, it's done. Here I'm just showing you all the different colors I use to paint this picture. Lots of them. I think I had to mix. I did. I had to use an acrylic dark umber for that color and maybe a few others, but it's mostly chalk paint. And I've got it all from Walmart. Now the next part we're going to do is put a resin finish on it. I want this to be really protected. So we're going to mix up some resin. Now read your bottles. It's usually 1-to-1 on the ratio of how you mix part A and part B. It always has a part A and part B, and it's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. I had one time that was a 2-to-1. I don't know why, but mostly they're 1-on-1. And I'm probably just going to finish out these bottles because that's a pretty big surface area there. And you're going to do equal parts. So these little cups have rims, and I'm using the rim that I stopped at to measure how much I put into the other cup. Wear gloves, it's sticky. I've done it without gloves, and I've wished I hadn't. That's part A. If you've never worked with resin and you're scared, don't be. It's really not that hard if you mix it properly and you stir it the correct amount of time. I believe this one has a 3-minute stir time. If you use the white resin that cures in 10 minutes, you have, I think it's a minute that you stir it before it starts to get hard. But this will take, I'll let it sit for 24 hours to really dry before I come back and do whatever else I'm going to do. So you've now got equal parts of A and B, and then you're just going to combine them. And this particular brand says to stir for 3 minutes. I'm sorry. And you can see I've got my timer set on my phone because I'll forget how long I've been stirring. And when you stir it, you want to stir it slowly and gently because you're trying not to create a lot of bubbles in your resin. You want it to come out really smooth and clear. Now you will have a few, but I'll show you how to take care of those in just a second. I use this big dowel stick because it's not flimsy and I can use it again. I'll just wipe it off and reuse it next time I pour. Now that we've got it mixed, we're just going to pour it in an even layer. Well, it won't be even at first, but you're just going to start pouring it over your product. For a minute there, I got scared. It looked like I was pouring it outside the frame, but I know I didn't. I mean, I've already done it. It just looked awkward. Now I'm pouring it all inside the tray. You want to try to pour enough to you're going to be able to cover that bottom. If you pour too much, you could always have a silicone mold handy to pour the excess into. But at this point, I'm just going to start moving that resin around on the bottom of the tray. We'll fill out every little piece of it. Make sure there's no empty spaces. It'll take a minute. It's cold in the house right now, so it's not moving really fast, which can sometimes be a blessing. I don't want it going up over the edge there. I want it to stay on the bottom of my tray. I don't think you can see it very clearly from here, but it's actually moving into the spaces that had no resin as I'm moving it around. And they have these little things I got at Hobby Lobby. They're little silicone tipped something or somethings. I don't know what you call them, but it's a little silicone tip that I can use to move that resin around. If you don't have one, you could use a toothpick or you could use a popsicle stick. I like the little resin tipped sticks because you can wipe them off. The resin doesn't stick to them. And I'm just using it to move that resin around to cover up any spaces that don't have any resin on them. It does self-level as it dries, but since it's kind of cool in the house and it's not moving really fast, I want to make sure that I've got everything covered and then let it continue to level throughout the night. pick it up and move it around the light, because then you'll see if there's any spaces you need to move resin into. Get all the way to the edge in the corners. I think my bottles say that I had maybe, gosh, I can't remember, I don't have them in front of me now, maybe 40 minutes before it's too set to dry, to move around. I think it gives you a 40-minute time period to work it with the resin, but check your particular bottle on the instructions to tell you how long you've actually got to work with it before it gets too hard to actually move around. Those are those little silicone sticks I was telling you about. I think I got those at Hobby Lobby. They have them on the aisle where you buy the resin. Just double checking to make sure I've got everything covered. Now, after you've poured your resin, you're going to try to get rid of some bubbles, and you do that by taking a lighter or a small torch. But be careful because I've actually caused a flame to pop up on my resin by getting too close to it. The lighter's working fine. I have a little torch that I use that I like better. I just couldn't remember where I put it, because I'll basically use all the whatever's in there, butane, I guess, in that lighter. I'll use it all up on this one piece. But you're going to take that little flame and go over your resin, and you'll be able to see, you can't see it on the screen, but you'll be able to see bubbles popping and then it flattening out. It'll give you a really clear finish. I mean, you don't want a resin pour that has champagne bubbles in it. I mean, that's basically what it's going to look like. So don't aggressively mix your resin. And then once you've poured it, just run your lighter or your little torch over it. Like I said, don't get too close to the resin because it does catch on fire. I learned that the hard way. You want to get it close enough to pop the bubbles, but not close enough to set on fire. Just keep it moving too, that'll help. If you get distracted and you're holding it in one place, it's going to be a problem. But resin really isn't hard to work with. It's just follow the directions and you'll be fine. Now I'm going to let this piece dry overnight. It'll level out really pretty and smooth, and then tomorrow I'll finish up. I'll put my scripture on it and a couple of other things, and I'll do one more small resin pour to make sure everything that I've put on here is sealed. This is the next day, and it's dry. I can touch it, and I did. But that's why I'm cleaning it off, because I can see my fingerprints on there where I was touching it. And on this left-hand corner, I'm going to be putting a scripture there. So I want it nice and clean and oil-free so that everything adheres properly. But I also don't want any fingerprints left on my resin pour here, because I will be pouring another not so thick layer on there over my scriptures to make sure that it's protected. It's not going to be as thick a pour, but it'll be a pour that just makes sure everything is totally protected, and you'll be able to lay stuff on there and it won't mess up your picture. It won't mess up your transfer. And this is just a rub-on transfer. The thing you have to make sure you do, the most important thing at this point is make sure your whatever your transfer is, that it's straight. Make sure that your actual frame, your tray is straight and centered, so that when you're laying that transfer on there, that it's centered. It would be horrible to go this far and then your writing is off kilter. I'd cry. I would cry. And what you do, you just peel off that back side, and again, pray that you get it on there straight. Just take your time. If it was a flower or a bird or anything else, if it wasn't writing, you could probably get away with it being a little crooked. It might look good that way, but if it's writing and it's crooked, you're going to be able to tell. And all you do is you lay it down, and then you just rub it with this little, I don't even know what you call those. It's a plastic stick that comes with your transfers. And you're just rubbing it down so that your image is going to stick, and then the backing will just peel off. This one really is stuck, so it's giving me a little trouble, but it'll eventually unpeel itself. Just when you start peeling, do it slowly, so that if you see anything that's not stuck down, you can rub it some more. And I think because I'm putting this on, or something that's got the resin's almost like a piece of glass, it's sticking really well. But again, pull it back carefully, because if something hasn't transferred all the way, you can rub it some more until it does. Whether you put a transfer of anything, a scripture or a quote or bird or a flower, is entirely up to you. It could have been done before I put this on there. It could have been a finished project. But I like to put a scripture on my work. And I pretty much have it straight. If it's crooked at all, it's not crooked where I can see it's crooked. And there's just one little piece that I have to put underneath it. To me, this is the scariest part of the whole project, is making sure this lettering is straight. I'm just going to take that backing that came with the transfer itself, and we're just going to rub that on there and make sure that the edges are down nice and smooth. Although I am putting another coat of resin on, just a thin coat. I want to make sure that the edges are all down properly. I want to make sure I have no fingerprints on it before I put that second coat of resin on there, because I'm afraid I'll be able to see them. There it is so far. You could put a little rope border around the inside, and I almost did, but I thought, gosh, you know what? That's going to collect dust and get dirty. And I liked the clean look of it without the rope border. But if you wanted to, you could. It would have been pretty with burlap rope or that white nautical rope. But here I've gone and mixed up another little batch of the resin. And it's not going to be as thick as at first, but I am wanting to put enough on there to cover the entire surface of my tray. I mean, you could, if you didn't mix enough, mix another little bit and pour some more, but I don't like doing that. I'm always afraid you'd be able to tell the difference. You probably wouldn't be able to. I'm just picky about it. I kind of want to do it all in one pour. And like I said, if I mix too much, I can always pour it into a silicone mold that I have and use that on another design. You can see where the spaces are that need to be filled, and you're going to just move it around again like we did the first time. You can actually see it moving in this one. It's kind of glide again. It's kind of a cool day, but it's going to glide across that board and fill up the spaces. Get it to the edge. Don't let it go over too much. Keep moving it around and around so that it only covers the bottom of your tray. And now everything that you've put on there is going to be totally protected. I think resin takes at least 30 days to completely cure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's at least 30 days. So if you are going to sit anything on it, I would wait at least 30 days to actually put things on it, like a coffee cup or whatever, a little plant, whatever you're going to put on it, if anything. I would wait at least 30 days to give it a proper curing time. I just love the way this turned out. It's terrible. I fall in love with each piece that I make and almost don't want to put it in my shop, but if I did that, I'd run out of house to put it in. So this one is available in my Etsy shop. The name of my Etsy shop is CJL Home Decor and More. Because I didn't make this pour as thick, I'm really having to make sure it's covering the entire area. There's no little spaces or pockets left with no resin. And this too will level out. I'll let this sit again overnight. I remember taking my grandsons to a beach, not far from where we live. And we had to get there by boat. And on this beach, the sand looked like it had gold flakes in it. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It actually looked like gold flakes all throughout the sand. I don't know what it was, but it was so beautiful. So I'm going to try to add some of that magic into this layer of resin before it dries, because it just reminds me of a time where I took my grandkids and we saw something so special. The beach just sparkled. It wasn't gold. I can't remember what they called it, but it looked magical. I'm going to try to recreate a little bit of that magic with this piece. You can't see it here, but I did take some gold, glittery, it's a gold glitter, but I think it's actually glass. And I put it along just a little bitty pieces here and there in the sand. You can't see it from this picture, but you can see it in other pictures. If you look in the Etsy shop, you'll be able to see it. But I just love it. I love the way it turned out. And I hope that you take a chance and try to create something beautiful with an old tray, an old box, something that somebody's thrown away. You can redeem it and make something beautiful. Bye now.